There's a couple avenues of thoughts here when putting this car together. The first one being slap it together as quick as we can to get it back on the road so we can enjoy it. And the other one, in the direction that we're going to go, is actually the thought of that we're already here anyway, so we might as well dig further and see if there's any other issues that we can correct, so later down the road we don't have to redo this entire process. Now, if you're new here and you haven't seen the first episode, I do suggest that you go watch it, but a quick recap is we're restoring my 1984 Toyota Corolla with a 20 valve swap to its former glory, and we're making some improvements and modifications along the way that I think are going to be really interesting, especially to the Corolla community. Now, before we can make any progress forward, what we have to do, unfortunately, is disassemble pretty much all of the wiring and everything that's in the interior, and that's what you see me doing here. I will wholeheartedly be the first person to admit that as I'm going through this project and I'm cleaning up all of this wiring, there's definitely some questionable wiring here that I know that I've done when I put the car together a few years back. And that's not to say that it was put together incorrectly, just there's a lot of things I could have done a little bit more cleaner and kind of organized the wiring a little bit more for times like this when I'm disassembling the car, and now I'm kind of fighting with getting things through the firewall in certain orders just because I kind of crammed everything in here. But with this build being on YouTube now and everyone can see the progress, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be quick to jump to the comments to tell me how much I've done something wrong. But no, seriously, if you have any suggestions on what I should do to clean up wiring or really any input throughout this entire process, please feel free to leave a comment below. I'm just an average dude building the car in my garage, just like most people that are probably watching this video. So one of the big motivators behind actually digging deeper into the car is when I picked the car up, there was no carpet, and you could see right on the floorboard where your left foot would sit in the driver position that there was some surface rust. Being that it's the most trafficked area in the car and it's covered by the sound deadening, who knows what's underneath it? So we're going to take the chance we have now with the car apart and see what's underneath and what we have to do to fix it. And in the process of doing all that, we're removing pretty much all of the brackets and everything that's in the interior. So that gives us an opportunity to clean up all of those and make those look new and prevent them from rusting in the future as well. With the wiring harness out, it gives me the perfect opportunity to clean it up. At some point in its life, there was an aftermarket radio installed, and a lot of that wiring was cut into and no longer usable. So this gives me the perfect chance to source a pigtail for that and get it back to original, as well as I can start tucking things and relooming and really make the entire wiring harness just a little bit cleaner in the car and ultimately make it easier to service in the future. As we get further with the progress of the car and removing a lot of these pieces, a lot of them are just incredibly brittle or just really gross, and most of these pieces are pretty irreplaceable. At least they don't make new ones anymore, and any used ones you're going to get are, again, going to be 40 years old and probably just as crumbly. And I can't help it, but the creative in me gets really excited about the thought of recreating some of these pieces, both with 3D printing and the leather crafting skill that I've honed over the last few years. And of course, that's still a ways away, but I think thoughts like that and looking at the end vision of the project, it really helps you keep motivated when you're dealing with something that is this involved. I have to give credit where credit is due, and not only does my wife hold the camera the entire time and point it at me so we can make these videos, but she also spent 3 miserable days getting this sound deadening up. Now, the right way to do this would have just been to get dry ice, and I don't know why we thought using a heat gun and various different scrapers and screwdrivers would have been a great idea, but if you're looking at doing this, just use this video as an example of what not to do and just go spend the money on dry ice. You're gonna save yourself a ton of time. And just as expected, we found the rust hole that we figured was there. And to be completely honest, I'm kind of shocked that it's not worse. I've seen a lot of other videos online and photos of other Corollas, and this area is usually one of the areas that pretty much just deteriorates to nothing. So even though we do have a rust hole and it looks like a solid amount of surface rust to fix, I'm really grateful that it's not any worse. And truth be told, because we do have to fix the rust, it gives me a really good excuse on painting the interior. Now this spot is a little different. It's made up of 3 pieces of metal. There's your firewall, there's the floor, and there's like this outer floor skin frame rail sort of section. And really there's 2 pieces of metal that I have to weld in. So I'm being a little bit more cautious here when I'm cutting, because I do want to try and replace this sort of in the same way that it was originally. Now I did clean this area up the best that I could using various different grinders and bits and wire wheels to give us the best chance at no rust ever coming back. And to make the little replacement panels that are going to be welded in, I use the same sort of tracing with a paper technique that I did in the first episode. And if you haven't seen that, the short version of it, you take a piece of paper, you put it on the back side of your hole, and you trace around the hole that you need to cut. And then when you transfer it over to the metal, you want to cut it just a little big so you can sit there and you can sort of grind away and get it to fit nice and tight. I found that it's easiest to use sort of a construction paper or a cardstock, but really you can use whatever you have on hand. Now I have to admit, I'm not a welder, and welding really thin metal for someone who doesn't use this machine very often, it's pretty tricky and really challenging. But luckily for me and everybody watching, they make grinders. And this is a part of the car that's never seen, so as long as it's solid, rust-free, and we protect it from any moisture, there shouldn't be any issues. I did, however, make a story on my Instagram as I was working on this, and I wanted everyone's opinion on whether I should clean the welds down and make it nice and smooth before I go ahead and seam seal and prime over it, or if I should just leave it and send it because no one's ever gonna see it. And honestly, to my surprise, everybody just said to seam seal and send it. To me, that feels a little wrong, seeing as the welds are pretty freaking ugly. And for the time being, I did just throw some primer over it so no moisture gets into the welds, and my buddy Trevor came over to judge my work. Ultimately, I'll probably end up cleaning the welds before I continue further, but this is as far as I got for the video. If you made it this far in the video, I just want to say thank you. It means the world to me that you would watch this entire thing all the way through. Hopefully I've given you enough entertainment or inspiration to earn your subscription and possibly a comment down below. And if you would like to support us even further, my wife and I actually run a website to where we make handmade, really high quality shift knobs. So if you're looking for something, I'll leave a link in the description below, and I'm even going to include a little coupon code you can use to save 10%. And once again, thank you. I appreciate everyone who's made it this far, and I'll see you guys in part 3.